I found myself watching YouTube videos, scrolling through, and then I found myself watching this again. So, this is the hospital scene from The Godfather. I had watched gangster movies when I was growing up during my formative years as almost like a social education of sorts, because I grew up as a neurodivergent kid whose social development was rather stunted due to a number of factors. My mother being overprotective, well, me being neurodivergent, teachers in school being not very helpful, classmates bullying me. It's the usual stuff. Don't worry, I wasn't beaten up or anything. It's just, like psychological tormenting. But this particular scene in The Godfather had me thinking of last year, May 2024, when my mother got hit by a motorcycle and she had to stay in the hospital for 9 days. And I had to be with her the whole time. And it had me reminiscing about harsh and lonely 9 days because I had to do everything by myself. A year later, everything's fine now. Everything's back to normal. My mother's fine now. She's fully recovered, as if the accident never happened. Her recovery was nigh miraculous even. But during that whole hospital stay and throughout her whole recovery, we barely had any help. It was just me. And there was some help from the outside, but those same people throughout my childhood were telling me that I was incompetent. When a kid's having difficulties, they give them negative reinforcement. It's a thing. It's a cultural thing. And it added to the childhood trauma, definitely. So I grew up throughout my late teens, throughout my 20s, rather unsure of myself because of that. And I had a lot of growing up to do. And without a father figure, well, my father died when I was 4, and my mother never sought another man. She was my mother 24/7, unfortunately, because she was overprotective and rather emotionally abusive. Well, I can't really complain. I was still provided for, I was still supported materially, but emotionally, I was almost entirely on my own. So I had to learn everything from scratch by myself. Like, they would give advice, but they would give it in a way that didn't inspire confidence in me, shall we say. Again, negative reinforcement. That may sound like I'm complaining, but it is what it is. But something happened in those 9 days. When we got to the hospital and I had to stay with her, at first, I was a nervous wreck. And it didn't help that I couldn't get a wink of sleep in the hospital because nurses would come and go and I would just get woken up. I just couldn't sleep. Finally, on the 5th day, I hired a caretaker. I was told not to because it'd be expensive. But during that time, they weren't helping me one bit, and I was losing my mind. I had to come home and get some sleep. So I did. And finally, with like 8-9 hours of sleep, I was able to return to the hospital and take better care of my mother. And during that time, I finally was able to cement in my head, you don't have to listen to advice if it's bad. No, you're not offending anyone by doing so. You're a grown-ass man now, Sonny. You can make your own decisions. In a way, it made me better identify with this scene in The Godfather. And on the 9th day, when I decided that I was going to help my mother come back home by myself, that day was special because it was like a culmination of the hyperbolic time chamber of psychological development that I experienced in that hospital. At the very end of this scene, you're gonna have to watch it. For people who watched The Godfather, there's this scene where Enzo, the baker, who helped Michael Corleone fend off the mobsters, to light the cigarette. That. You saw that? Michael looked at the lighter that he was holding. I'm not shaking. I'm not nervous. Then he closes the Zippo. I experienced that too. When we finally got back home from the hospital, it made me think, all those people that were telling me that I was incompetent to my face, I can now confidently say, not out loud, but you were wrong. I'm not incompetent.